Now, it's probably just got my 10-second thing too, which makes me look like the jerk. But hey, we're live, Steve.
Thanks, Seth. That was done flawlessly. You're ready for the big time, buddy. Hey, everybody. Thank you very much for joining us here. We have a panel today here via Zoom, everyone in our own private spaces still. Oh, there it is. Hold on. Sorry, hang on. I've got the YouTube link up and it just started playing back my headphones, so I had to mute that for a second. We are here talking with a group of people all in our respective homes, and we are getting down with what is how we return to work, specifically in the photography and the filmmaking industries. I'm going to start with introducing myself. My name is Stephen Pierce. I'm a director and owner of Framework Productions. I work for Saturday Night Live and other NBC shows. And I'm going to let our other panelists introduce themselves and let you know who they are and what they do.
Oh, you want to go with me first?
Yeah, you first, Seth.
Right. Hi, what's going on, everybody? You know who I am, Seth Miranda. I'm a content creator here at Adorama, but I'm a pro photographer of about 20 years now. And I'm mainly known for shooting the special effects makeup industry. So a lot of studio work, a lot of people on set, real close together. So there's going to be a huge change. Yeah, last ex-witness on all social.
Ladies next.
You do it. Toots, you're up, man.
Hello, everybody. My name is Jose Tutivan, also known as Toots. I am a Bronx-based photographer and videographer and producer. I'm mainly known for shooting portraits and environmental portraiture and lifestyle, and work with a lot of brands and create content, and definitely do a lot of passionate about a lot of personal projects as well.
Al?
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Al Bello. I'm a photographer at Getty Images. I've worked there about 27 years and mainly do sports, people in sport picture stories, portraits. And up until the coronavirus started, I that's all I did, and moved into the news department for now. And until sports gets going fully, I have been doing that kind of stuff.
Sportraits is a term I've never heard before.
Never heard of that. You should trademark that immediately, man.
I didn't make it up.
And Corey.
Hey, I'm Corey Torpy. I'm a wedding photographer, and I've been doing that for over 10 years. And I also photograph politics. I'm Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's campaign photographer since 2018.
Sweet.
Great. Thank you guys all for being here, taking a little bit of time out of your Wednesday evening. For everybody watching on YouTube, one thing to keep in mind, I'm going to be pulling in your questions via chat to bring to the group here. You can either ask general questions or questions specifically to any of the panelists. If you're going to ask a question in the chat, I ask you to do me a favor. Write question, great big, in all caps, at the beginning of your comment so that it's easy for me, with the comments to pull it out and bring it in. I'll do that periodically, but at the end of the event here, we're going to leave time specifically for questions. So if something comes up, you still have a little bit of time to get it in. So let's go ahead and start looking forward to what it's going to be like and what we're all here for, what it is going to be like when we return to work. So specifically, I think it'd be interesting to hear from everybody. We have people that work in campaigns. We have people that work with special effects makeup, in sports, journalism. Whenever you return to what kind of made your career, or whenever you actually start going back to work, what does that look like for you? Like, what do you think the first step is going to be for you to feel safe to go back, and what does that job look like?
Well,
Who's going?
I can if you want, because I've been working the whole way through. And again, like I said, I migrated over to news, and just now dipping my toe back into the sports world. And it's pretty much common sense, guys. Do what the governors have been telling you. Wear a mask, put the lotion on, the sanitizer, and stay away from people best you can. If you're find yourself in a situation at like a protest or maybe a press conference, just use almost like make a little invisible bubble around yourself if you can. I've tried all different things, held my breath. I've looked away, and I've just always had the mask on, no matter how hot I was or how uncomfortable I was. I just think of it as it's better than dying. That's how I look at it. And that's my mindset when I'm out there working. Even this morning, I was out at Belmont Racetrack doing the training for the race this week, outdoors, but I still have a little force field around me. Try and keep it that way. It's not always something I could keep around me. I do find myself in groups of people sometimes, but immediately get myself out if I feel uncomfortable.
Seth, whenever you, go ahead, Toots. No, you next.
I was going to say, there's definitely like an element of fear factor when you try to like attack in these situations, when you try to be ready. And I think that's what's been more of a initial factor, thought process when I go get assigned or start to become active in going out there, because my role is more outdoors. So I'm a little bit more cautious. I'm not less cautious when it comes to indoors. Obviously, my work entitles like outdoors or environmental type of like shots. So, but still, the factor for me is just that I don't want to go out there and get sick and bring it back to my house, because I have a family to kind of like look over and kind of prioritize in these situations. And I mean, that for me is probably what comes to mind when I start execute these type of jobs moving forward.
Right. How about you, Corey? What does the campaign look like whenever you're going to have to work, I assume, before Election Day?
So I've been working pretty much the whole time as well, or at least the first couple, like within the first few weeks of shutting down in New York City. I actually also had to cancel a wedding right before New York City shut down. So to your point also of listening to what the governors are saying, I would say it's also really important to make sure you're staying informed of what's going on around you, because at the point where we hadn't shut down New York City yet, LA was already shutting down with less cases. So I had to make a call to actually cancel a wedding. So, being okay to say no to things is also really important. But as far as like going out and shooting, mask, gloves if you can, hand sanitizer if you can't. And it sucks, it's hot, but you have to stay safe. And also now that testing is more readily available, like get tested, get your antibodies tested. And that way you keep everyone safe.
Seth, what do you think it's going to look like whenever you start to go back into the studio and try and do special effects shots?
I think it's going to look like a morgue. I'm not kidding. They've been trying out scenarios where you have to realize that they're doing makeup on someone, they're within arm's length. The person getting the makeup can't have any protection on them because, I don't know, they're getting glued, prosthetics, painted for 3 to 5 hours at a time. And you're talking about 20 to 30 makeups in a row. That's just the models being 20 to 30 people, right? So now I have to scale that back, which makes the workflow that much more sparse. And then they're putting masks on the makeup artist and then shields in front of the mask. So it's kind of like if anyone's actually exposed, it's not so much a two-way street because they're totally open, but even going towards and receiving from the model to the makeup artist, they have to wear, I swear, it looks like they're gonna take out a bone saw and start doing some like bone marrow transfer. I don't know what it is, it's crazy. But I also have to watch what I'm doing because there's plenty of times just out of instinct, you step in and you try to move hair out of the way or you do something like, you have to be super conscious of keeping that distance and understanding, that carte blanche of you're working there just isn't there. Number one is the safety of something we can't see, not just safety on set, like don't trip on something, but like just safety of a viral infection. And then comes the production, which is kind of like a crazy thought,
How in special effects makeup, one of the things I know, there are also a couple other things I've heard about happening is like right now, I know a model that did a shoot just this week. And while they were on set, they used all disposable makeup. So all the makeup was discarded after a one-time use on one model, which obviously has a budget effect. But I believe do you think that's necessary for the safety, in your opinion?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I've done shoots with musicians that had like, needle tracks on their arms and they tried to cover them up with makeup. It's like, throw those brushes out now. Like, don't save that. They used to clean their brushes because it's hundreds of dollars every time. But I think we're going to see a lot more disposable things going forward for a while. It's going to cause more trash and things like that. So I'm sure it's going to be not exactly the most PC thing to do right now, but as far as survival, sure. I mean, when you're working on, I don't know about any of you, but when I have to work with a makeup artist and they're doing special effects contact lenses, I can't even have a makeup artist do those contact lenses anymore. I need an optic tech in the room because you could scratch someone's cornea. Or your eyes are actually like working with someone's bloodstream. Like it's all safety protocol. I mean, you guys work more in crowds. I'm more confined to a space, so I'm more aware of the space I have to work in. You're more in your own zone of how many people in that bubble, I guess, right?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, one other thing, and before we leave on that, I want to say something else I've heard that people have been doing with models is that they also instruct the model not to speak while they're in the makeup chair because they're obviously more or less exposed. So they will obviously be emitting some particles while they're breathing, but that's something else that I've heard people have been doing. But yeah, Corey and Al, and Toots, forgive me if you also work in crowds and I'm just not familiar with that. How are you going to approach, I guess, working in a crowd beyond just a mask and gloves? Is there other things you can take into account to maintain your safety and also the fact that you're going to crowds more often than a lot of these people are that are in the crowd? So you might bring something to them unknowing, like how are you addressing that?
Yeah, I mean, I've been in crowds already with the protests, and I've been in some situations at the hospitals where there's crowds, and getting back to the horse racing, just little groups of people. Again, it's all self-awareness. It's like an extra sense you have to have, and just make sure that you kind of just be aware to be as distant as possible. There's really no magic thing I can tell you. It's just just be self-aware.
But is there a line? But is there a line like where you're trying to get a shot and you're like, oh, if I get here, it'll be the right thing? And at what point do you pull the plug?
Like I said before, I'm a breath holder under my mask. I just hold my breath like I'm underwater. I don't know if that helps, guys. I swear I really don't. But I just know if I'm not breathing anyone else's breath. So if I have to go in there, I will. But I'm just gonna hold my breath and make believe I'm underwater, and that's kind of what.
I mean, at least we know sunlight actually helps kill it. At least when you're outside in UV light, there's some sort of like extra something that's keeping it from being transmitted to. At least that's what they're telling us, right?
Yeah.
That's allegedly, yeah.
You hear a lot of things.
Allegedly. Drinking bleach, all that stuff.
I'm constantly spraying myself with my own alcohol and water mix. I just, the rubbing alcohol mix, I just spray like I spray suntan lotion on, I just spray myself I have it in my pocket and I just spray it. If I touch something.
So they're telling me that you shouldn't do that too much because it breaks down a natural barrier you have and you can actually be more susceptible to an infection somehow that way.
Yeah, they're saying that a lot about that too. Basically, that if you put too much, you're killing the actual like defense mechanism on your skin that you have protection, or just maybe only do it when you feel like you're about to like touch your face or something like that, or if you're gonna be or touching a lot of things that are gonna be like brushing on your face or something like that. I don't know. I've been very hesitant on trying to put myself in those situations. I'm more on a concept of like, I'm used to like working with a small team, when you have like a producer, the client itself, the model, the talents, and then you also have like the makeup artist, and the hairdress. I think there's really, for me, like a small team is really like more like a 5-6 people crew. But I think we all feel very uncomfortable when someone is not wearing a mask. We will probably feel very hesitant if somebody is not doing their part. So if one person really is not doing their part, it kind of feels like, let me step away from this scenario. And so those things have to be addressed immediately before you even go into the scene. So a lot of it has to be like a pre-populated list of an email list, or saying, look, this before you show up, this is a must, and you must do this, and you must have this in order to be present and within the working zone. So it's been a little bit of that. And I've also encountered a lot of people that just don't care. And then that's where it becomes a little bit frustrating when it comes to like trying to execute a job when somebody else becomes an issue within the team. And I mean, you get to address it in a way, but it kind of creates like a defense around the whole like artistry of it. I mean, I don't know if you guys encountered that type of situation where you have to confront somebody, tell them, listen, I can't be around this person because he's not, you know, or she is not being protective of us or respecting our safety.
I got more to add to that, definitely. But Corey, how do you address working with the crowds and stuff right now?
So the way I've been operating is that I don't have control over what other people do. So I've been making sure that if possible, and I'm going to be inside, that my mask is a filtered mask. And I'm like, you know, wearing gloves. When I come back into my house, like I've got 2 kids and a husband. So when I come back into my house, I, you know, go straight to the bathroom, wipe down my camera gear, get out of my clothes and shower. But yeah, like just making sure that you're keeping yourself as protected as possible will also keep everyone else protected. But knowing that you can't control people when you're out, and there are going to be people who get closer to you than you want, and people who are going to take their masks off, and being comfortable to like just kind of walk away for a moment. But ultimately also like having that filtration has made me feel a lot more comfortable.
So define that for a second, in case somebody's not familiar. What is a filtered mask that you're talking about that you were using?
So an N95 mask is going to have a filtration system on it, is a little bit better than just having like a face covering. So like if I'm going to the grocery store or something like that, I'll probably take an N95 mask. But if I'm going for a walk to the park or like, you know, just out and about, I'll just wear like a handmade mask. So I have like different masks for different situations. And the N95s I toss away after each use, as opposed to like I have washable ones that I use for like everyday stuff.
Yeah, I got rolls of that stuff. So instead of getting the filters, I got rolls by like 100 feet of melt blown, because that's what it has to be, melt blown fabric that has less pores that is smaller than what the virus is. I got it for.
Oh, we're kind of losing you here, Seth. You're breaking up just a little bit for me. Can you try that last bit again? You broke up. I think you said something obscene, so it was a great time for it to break up there. You might have saved yourself some headache.
Yeah, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it.
Oh, now you're back.
Okay.
Now you're back.
Well, I'm wondering if, well, I'm the one streaming this Zoom call, so I'm wondering if I'm losing the stream.
A little bit of bandwidth because of that.
Yeah.
So
that's all good.
So one thing, I'm not sure if any of you are familiar with it, I believe it came out last week, but SAG-AFTRA, IATS, IA, the DGA, and the Teamsters just released a big white papers protocol about returning to set. And for filmmakers, at least, and I don't know how much this relates to you, but it's a very dense 37-page document. It's readily available it's readily available on, I believe, SAG's website, because they were the last entity to release it. And it's really interesting, the approach they're taking, because the way sets are going to work moving forward is they're going to break them into different zones. So there's essentially going to be a zone A, which is, and it comes down to specifically different things: who has access to these zones, what the requirements for PPE are in the zones, and the testing. Because somebody had mentioned a minute ago, like the testing, and that's really what that comes down to. They consider a zone. I'm just going to briefly overview them. I'm just paraphrasing this from my read through of it. So I really encourage anybody that's interested in this to go check it out, because I think it's a good industry standard. At least it's a good first step. Zone A is going to specifically be like talent and people that have to work close proximity to talent. So makeup artists, wardrobe artists, directors of photography, assistant cameras, people like that have to be in the same space, and they're like going to be required to be tested 3 times weekly. So that is a pretty big commitment, because the test so far is very aggressive. They still are taking the swab and pressing it all the way to the, you know, inside of your nasal cavity. It's very uncomfortable. Zone B are people that don't have to work in the area of Zone A, and are not allowed within the Zone A regions, and they have to be tested once per week. And then Zone C is considered everything else offset. And so it was very, and also they're doing things like, and this is kind of protocol that we've adopted at my company too, is that, for instance, like craft services is totally different. So if you have like snacks and things for your crew members on set, that no longer is really existent, at least not on our sets. We do individually wrapped things, and even food all has to be individually wrapped and prepared and hand delivered to the cast member. And also it introduces on our sets, as well as the SAG mandates, they require a whole new department that's been created. It's basically a health and safety department, which a medical advisor is in charge of the whole thing. And then you also have to have like a medical manager and a sanitization team. And then there's all these checkpoints for medical checkpoints where you have to like get in and be tested and have pass all these checks. So it's really, I really do encourage, if you're interested in what you are going to do, it's a really pretty sweeping, specific, case-driven study for inside and outside, how to deal with people around you too. So I'd encourage you to go check it out. So
yeah, but you and me have to worry about things like insurance of talent, insurance of our sets, things like that. So these protocols are really designed for that as well. Like we have to take the temperature of everyone who walks onto a set.
We do that as well. But there are HIPAA regulations and stuff that come into play with that too. So it's important. What I did for my company, again, is I consulted with our lawyer and I said, here's what I've seen done. Here's what we want to do. How do we do this? And what do we have to maintain? And then we created a kind of a one sheet for our clients and for our crew members and everyone that's going to be on set that says, here are the rules of how this works. And, here's the mandates of what we're going to do. What happens if someone shows up sick, for instance? If they show up sick and they can't pass a temperature test, even if it's the DP, even if it's the director, what do you do? And our position is right now, safety for everybody. You go home, you get paid for that day, but you can't work today because it endangers everyone else. So now I've gone on a little bit of a diatribe here. Somebody actually had a really interesting question, and forgive me that I don't remember the name of the person who asked it, but one of the things that is being asked of crew members coming on sets nowadays, and I'd be curious if you all have encountered this, is to sign a waiver, understanding that there is a risk that you're assuming by going and working. What do you think? How do you feel about that? And have you encountered that yet?
Yeah. It's first of all, it's a waiver for everything and anything, just to be like, hey, just in case. And all they can do is say, here's what we've done to ensure your safety, which is usually some sort of air circulation, sanitizers within arm's reach, distancing measures to make sure people aren't on top of each other. They can tell you that all day, but there's, who knows how anything's going to get transmitted. So yeah, I'm already dealing with waivers. I don't know about if anybody else is, but
not yet. Not in my field yet. At least not what I've been doing so far. A lot of the stuff that I've been doing is very like local and very small and intimate. So like small groups have been like the starting point for me to kind of get. I'm just trying to prepare for like the bigger things. That's what that's why I think this particular like session is really important to like acknowledge and kind of all this information is good. I would expect
that, that your agency work and stuff, as they give you a brief, whenever they contract you, that's something that's going to come up. It's going to start including a waiver, I think. Yeah. Okay. And so what do you think? For me, I guess I'm going to look at the company's protocol before I sign a waiver and see what that is, because I think it's understandable. You know what I mean? Everybody's worried about what the liability is going to be, but there's also this pressure to return to work for individuals, right? We all need a job. We all need to pay our rent. We need to, keep our livings going. So you want to return to work. You feel pressured to return to work. So how do you make that distinction of when to say no, which is one of the questions I wanted to move on. Corey, I know you have some specific feelings about where to draw that line and what is right and wrong for you.
Yeah. So, in the beginning of everything, when we started to shut down, I did have to say no to a wedding, and it was a really, really, really hard decision because it was actually counter to the guidance that we were receiving from the state. But I think we pushed it a little bit before closing down. So I made the call that it actually wasn't safe for me and my family, most importantly, to be there, because there were going to be people at the wedding from Seattle, which at that point was also another hotspot. And we would be inside, and while people were working the wedding, we're going to be asked to wear PPE. Guests were not. So at that time, we didn't know enough that didn't feel safe for me. It's really hard to say no. I think being like armed with like as much information as possible about like what's going on within the country, where people are coming from for the event or for the shoot, and also what precautions are being taken on site before you sign a waiver. Because if you're signing away your like a waiver, you need to also be guaranteed that you're being taken care of as an employee. And that is really, really important. And you need to advocate for yourself.
Agreed. That's exactly what I was saying. No, go for it.
What about creatively? How are you like going around protests and political figures where they take off the mask when they talk, but like everybody's got the same showing just their eyes? How are you? Do you figure like you're dictating yourself for the shots differently? You're waiting for the moments when the masks come off. Do you wait? Do you long lens it? Or like what are you looking for now? Is it like
Al, you for protests or?
I think
you're everything, photojournalism in general. I mean, it's just kind of like you're
how does it
around.
You walk into a crowd of protesters right now, or your political campaign, and the shot you need with the candidate or with the coverage you want to get is right there, and there's a crowd of people not wearing a mask, like falling around and like jumping and running around. Does that affect you creatively? How do you get over it? How do you address it?
I mean, I just kind of try to work through it. So a couple weeks ago, I got a positive antibody test back, and I know we are still the jury is still out on what that means precisely, but it has made me feel a little bit more comfortable. I was also surprised that I hadn't gotten sick being out, even though I was taking precautions. So take this with a grain of salt, but I try to keep an eye out. Most people actually around us have been wearing masks at the events that I've been at. And as far as photographing, Alexandria, when she's out, she's wearing a mask. Those are still the shots that I need. I don't need stuff with her not wearing a mask. I feel like our visual dialogue has changed quite a bit, that now seeing somebody in an image without a mask seems a little bit weird, and like they're not actually meeting the moment. So,
it's almost like counterculture at this point.
Yeah, and I mean, the way I photograph campaigns is to try and keep it as true and honest to what is actually happening. So creatively, I'm just going with the flow. And the flow is all masks all the time.
Yeah. So Kenan asked in our comment sections, how much of the waiver is dictated by state law? I think I want to clarify the waivers I'm speaking about. I'm not clear if there are ones dictated by the state. I think it's coming from the agencies, the hiring companies, the employers themselves that will be giving you a waiver that will say, if you were going to shoot this thing, you recognize that you are assuming a certain amount of risk. And I think that, I know Corey, I believe you and I were on the same page here, and I don't know about the rest of it. First thing I would do is ask for the safety protocols from that company for the set and make sure that I feel comfortable with what they're doing, that I feel comfortable saying, okay, you were doing enough that I feel like I can be safe. And I would make sure that you have a contingency plan for if you go up and they don't follow protocols that make you safe, how you're going to feel walking away from that job. And that should be part of weighing whether you take it or not. Al, how do you deal with in the news work you're currently doing, and also in the sports work that you're going to hopefully begin doing coming up, if you're encountering a situation that is, less than compliant? What is your plan?
Yeah, I feel like if I protect myself the best I can, I haven't had any reservations about if there's a photograph that I want, I'll still go after it. To a degree where if I feel unsafe, I just won't do it. But hasn't really gotten to that. You had mentioned if you're in a protest and people have their masks off and they're all chanting, and yeah, I mean, there was a couple of situations where, look, we all do what we do, and old habits die hard, I guess. So I did find myself a little closer than I wanted to, but once it hit me, I did back off. It's hard because, your instincts are to do what you always have done. And then all of a sudden you put the brakes on, a picture that is in there, close in there. It shook me up a little bit the first time that happened, where I realized, hey, you're close. And I try not to get there again, unless, absolutely, I thought, well, I'm going to go get this again. I hold my breath, do the picture, and then get out again. This morning was that situation out at the back at the racetrack. They were washing a horse. I thought, if I get in close and then get in and get out, it's what I did. And that's. I think that if you protect yourself the way it is recommended, and you can do your job safely, I believe.
Follow the protocols, err on safety.
Yes, exactly. You follow the protocols. it's a very, very different world in the sports world. I will tell you that, it's eerie. There's no fans anywhere.
That's it, yeah.
There's no team
Energy, right?
It's very strange, and it's almost like practice, like you're just out there, in the Wild West, maybe, and there are rules, don't get me wrong, but it's just, I covered the very first day of when they opened the racetracks again with nobody, and my goodness, makes a difference, and we're not allowed in some things yet. Boxing, our photographers are doing golf and NASCAR, and the UFC has their own people that they're using, but they're not opening up to many people yet. US Open tennis is going to happen. They're up in the air whether media is allowed at all. So this is a wait and see game. It's a whole different ball game in sports. So yeah, it's out of my control is how I see it. And I can only control what's here, what's in front of me.
Right.
Whatever it is, I just make the best of it. That's how I've dealt with this whole thing. I've just rolled with it, and I look at it as this is what it is. This is the challenge before me. What do I need to do to execute, my goal? Whether it's taking pictures of empty shopping carts, empty shopping shelves from the very beginning, or cashiers with masks on, or it evolved to the hospital, or doing people training at home, or
right,
just stuff that I found along the way, and
right,
each time I would think up something to do, I just always went, what do I need to do to be safe? Does the other person feel comfortable? If it involves another person, if I'm doing a shoot with somebody, and if everybody's on the same page, then I just go about my business,
right, absolutely.
Yeah, where it's an organized protest or an unorganized protest, again, common sense seems to win out overall,
Yeah, absolutely. So again, I'm just going to say, we're going to got a couple more questions here, and then we're going to leave a little time at the end in case anybody has questions, or, whether we'll get to those for sure. Toots, how has this changed your business model? Like, what are you looking at in the immediate future for things you're going to be doing, and what does resuming a normal-ish style work look for you, and what have you done to kind of supplement that?
Well, the biggest change for me, is basically that I'm not going to be working with the traveling is going to be one of them. There's been a lack of travel on my end. I came into my career where I'm actually doing like high-end campaigns, where it's just like big brands and big organizations, bigger budgets. That's been kind of like disappeared since this whole like pandemic. So basically right now, the only thing I'm really focusing on, just going back to like my roots and like the beginning, is just taking all these small little personal like clients and campaigns that I still had on my roster, but wasn't the highest percentage of what I wanted to do. So for me, immediately what I'm doing is I'm attacking these little gigs, go into it slowly, go into it understanding what do I need to like expect moving forward. For example, like I rarely shoot weddings, and I did a stoop wedding literally 2 weeks ago. And the stoop wedding was literally included just the girl that did the flowers, obviously the groom and the bride, the pastor, and probably like 6 guests, and they were all outside seated 6 feet away. Some were standing. So it felt like it's such a pivoting point for me on the concept of like, this doesn't take it's not an 8-hour shoot anymore. It's like literally 1 to 2 hours at max. So I'm doing these like smaller gigs and smaller campaigns, but also because of the concept of like, I have to adapt with the changes that are coming in right now. So initially what I have to do is kind of like attack all these small clients that I'm used to working with, and being more active with them as far as like how to approach when those big campaigns are ready to attack. So when it comes to big campaigns, I'm waiting for that to be the moment where they're going to have like a nice little roster of traveling and, production settings and call sheets and stuff like that. So I can't speak too much of it right now because for the last, I would say 4 months, it's just disappeared out of my radar. So just recently, I'm going back into the flow of going out there and shooting, doing a lot more personal like campaigns and personal projects. Passion projects are mostly my desire right now, just because that's something that I can work on my own schedule, my work time. So, but it's the concept of continuing to create and hopefully be prepared when those gigs start to come my way.
That's a very interesting point. Have you guys picked up any new skill sets? Like, what are the things that you're doing to kind of extend your skills during the time whenever you have a little extra time now?
Yeah, I was just listening to Toots, and he makes a lot of sense when it comes to these little assignments. It's almost like you're starting out all over again, and you're very much to yourself. And again, I work for a company that's pretty big, and the same time, I've been alone almost the whole time. I haven't seen anybody. I've just been doing work myself. But I thought to myself, well, here's a good time to try and learn some new stuff. They're already throwing me into news, I wish I never shot in my life. So I might as well just give it a shot, and I've been meaning to get, like, you ask about new skills. Like, I'm not a good test taker. I never was, but I studied for this drone test, the 107. So I got licensed for that, and it's opened up a whole new world for me, being able to see things from the sky now and take pictures from the sky. And I've used it in these 3 months, so many situations where I could never get where I want to get without having to climb a building. And then, and video is something I've always been afraid of. To be honest with you, it's always frightened me a bit. I've always felt like it's threatened me as a still photographer, that it would one day take over. And I thought, you know what? They mentioned if you want to try it, give it a shot. Getty's dabbling in that too. So I said, all right, I'll try it. And I learned, and it's not so bad. Am I an expert?
You're coming over to the dark side.
Well, it's so much I need to learn, but I put my foot in the water, you know what I mean? So, 2 things like that, if I'm running a regular schedule, I was, like Toot said, he travels all over, same as me. I was scheduled to be gone most April and May, and that all went out the window. So, I just put my time into my energy into doing this stuff, and it's paying off right now. So, guys, you make the most of every situation. It's not all as bleak as everybody says. You just gotta rethink and reinvent, and be inspired by others, and try and inspire yourself. And think outside the box. Just take that leap. Just jump. And see what happens. Again, safely, right? But what's the worst that can happen? You fail. So what? Fail how many times a day? I fall down the stairs 3 times a day, going down the basement. Things happen, and if you don't try anything, you don't get anything done. You don't make any mistakes if you don't try. And that's how I've approached everything in my career,
I'm going to put a little, definitely, I want to put a pin in travel because I've got a question about that. Anybody else picked up any special skills?
Yeah, to go with Al, like, I stayed away from video for a long time, and then I picked up live streaming, and then this hit, and all of a sudden my phone's going crazy, and I made a bunch of videos on my own YouTube channel on how I live stream. Next thing I know, Nikon licensed the videos, and that took care of a lot of jobs I don't have right now. So stupid things. You can't get anywhere if you're not out there. Mm-hmm. In your head, you think you exist to this world, but you don't unless you're out there doing it. And no one knows, like, Spielberg is not waiting to call you, okay? Like, you have to constantly be producing and putting something out there. And if you're someone who's visual and you're not shooting what you normally shoot, point it at something else that's available to you and make it your own. And if you can't figure that out, turn left. And if that doesn't work out, look behind you, because you either really want to do this or you don't. And every one of us got thrown a curveball overnight, virtually. And if you told me 2 years ago that I'd have been known for live streaming instead of shooting all this garbage over here. Like I never, nowhere. I mean, seriously, Steve, you met me through Adorama, and I've been like putting Adorama's events live for how many years now? Like I never thought I'd be doing that. I never thought I'd have to learn audio. Are you kidding me? I never in my life thought I'd have to learn audio. So there's enough education out there. There's enough education on this channel right here. I mean, it's insane. And if you're looking for inspiration, open your phone to every 3 platforms that exist every 4 seconds. Something's going to click, but it's up to you to put these to work. Don't buy into hype, invest in yourself, and you can't lose.
Put it on a t-shirt.
Maybe it
Don't
is.
buy
Maybe
into
it
hype.
exists.
Invest. That's another thing Nikon licensed.
While I like appreciate the energy of like, you know, making sure you're learning out there, learning new skills and putting yourself out there, I do also want to bring up another issue that probably will impact women a lot more than it does men, but there's a huge opportunity cost for women right now. I have never in my life been busier. I'm working and taking care of 2 children while my husband works full time, which I am like, we're so lucky. Like we're healthy, we're really lucky. But what I've done in the beginning of the pandemic when we weren't going out at all and shooting is like, I've actually turned the camera inward and like kept creating work, working on portraiture, working on lighting, but like with my kids. But I think it's something that we need to be aware of in the industry is that women are going to be facing a long-term issue because there's a lack of childcare that we won't be able to go out and work as easily. And it is a huge lift to go out and shoot. So like any day where I'm out shooting, like my husband works and takes care of, we have a 10-month-old and a 4-year-old. And like, you know, it's a huge lift. And I think it's something that we need to be aware of in the industry. And it obviously doesn't only impact women, but like women often get saddled with these issues with like you taking care of their kids and sacrificing work. So just, you know, a point of like, you know, it's great to go out and get new skills. I don't think it's a privilege to be able to go out and work on your skills at this time. So I think something we should all be aware of as well.
Absolutely. And that's a very, very good point. Something that I think that we're going to see ripple effects from this for a while. I think, I think this is going to have longer term effects. Which is also something to remember. To support the artists you like, maybe more than the platform you like specifically moving forward might be a good way to look at it. Yep. Because I think that people will all struggle in all different veins and they might secretly struggle even though they feel untouchable. So that's a very, very good point. Touching on travel just a little bit, I suspect a lot of my work involves documentary work. While I'm, tasked to go film a subject or a subject matter or a part of a series somewhere, usually domestically, and I imagine it's going to be all domestic coming up. Like, I don't think I'll be going internationally at least for a year. So how do you all, whenever you're going to be asked to travel again, what is going to make you feel comfortable to do that?
Nothing.
Nothing.
Well, I mean,
Seth's a bit of a homebody. He just wants a nice bowl of Campbell soup and just sit in the corner.
I was scheduled to be in Vegas 4 times between January and March just for trade show coverage stuff for content. Then there's the traveling for my actual freelance, and all the trade shows went away overnight. I mean, every single industry, Comic-Con, the E3. We got CES out the door before this hit, but all those kind of things, NAB, all these crazy South by Southwest got canceled. I was supposed to go to that and cover that as well. So I was in a mindset of not even being in this city for any of this at all, really. So for me to go on a plane while this was being reported, I remember watching everybody wiping down every seat and everything. I was like, these people are crazy. And then secretly, I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to do this really quick and sit down. But how can you be around circulating air after all this propaganda we've been force-fed into our skulls? I mean, Al's bathing in alcohol 50 times a day. I mean, what are we doing,
But at some point, but I think you might be talking a couple of months out. I mean, but what point? Is it just an issue of time? At what point do the numbers need to get that you feel comfortable traveling in that case? Like, I don't think there's going to be a moratorium on travel forever. So what level does that make you comfortable again? Like, so say,
we don't even know.
Say they reschedule. Yeah.
I think we're just going to have to take that risk eventually. Oh, there you go. A bodysuit.
Yeah.
You know what's going to happen? Honestly, I think a lot of talent will be locally sourced. I think instead of us being shipped to somewhere else to do our job, they're going to start looking for people that are in their own area that won't need to be shipped in for it.
Right. But so for instance, Al won't be able to film, and he won't be able to shoot well, I guess he could shoot certain teams of baseball, but if you were sent on an assignment for a sports, for the Kentucky Derby, when that comes back, or you have to travel for that. So Al, what makes that comfortable for you to travel, or would you travel now under certain parameters?
Yeah. I mean, I don't think to answer your question, when will I feel comfortable is when there is a vaccine, to be honest with you. Up until then, I'm just not, I'll deal with it, try and be safe with it. But, I'm of the thought that I think eventually there's no way I'm going to get caught somehow, unfortunately, but I'm trying to put that off best I can,
I think for me, sorry, I'm not going to interrupt you. Please continue.
Yeah. I don't have a hard and fast answer to that, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think there is no hard and fast answer. I think it's going to be, I think that's the real takeaway from this, maybe, is starting to define for each of us where that line is. Like, what is that? What is the tipping point? At what point does the money outweigh the risk? Or what point do you feel like you are ready emotionally and physically to take the risk? And where is that cross point? Well, it may not be today, it may not be this year, but maybe where is that? And I think that's going to be different for everyone.
I'm wondering if you all are feeling how I'm thinking, where it's if you say no enough, after a while you're not in their minds to be hired anymore. You know how this works? Like, it's all based on you being in someone's thought process to get hired all the time. So if you're just a constant wall for them to get something done, are you worried that after a while clients just aren't going to be there because they know you're going to say no or something like that?
Well, I have a similar case with that. I said no to like 2 clients on retrospect of my safety, and I was unsure if I was going to be able to execute it. But going back to that, I still follow up. So my thing is like, after saying no to that, literally a week later, 2 weeks later, now that everything's kind of going into phase 2, I've been on the concept of like, hey, how did that shoot go? Did you get somebody else? So for me, it's just a constant communication with the client. It doesn't have to be a job, because I don't expect to be hired all the time by the same client for every single job. But my constant workflow has always been like, even though I haven't worked with you in a year, I'm still going to remain like a constant communication with you. And that's, for me, has been more of like, let me make sure they're aware that I'm still around, I'm still working, I'm still available to do any future projects with them. So I think coming back to that concept of like saying no doesn't mean that you're not going to get hired, unless you literally do not respond to their emails anymore.
And I think that one of the things, if you have a client that is so pushy that you can't say no to them for a while, and or you're not remembered after saying no for valuable reasons. I think anybody, if you said, my personal health is my priority right now, and I don't feel comfortable taking this job just for nothing about the job is just not within my comfort zone. If somebody rejects you because of that, I'm not sure that's a client I would want to have,
That's not what happens though. What happens is the person who does get that job gets that much more tighter with the relationship, and that just becomes a natural replacement. It's not that there's malicious intent. Right. It's just how things go.
But it is also, in my experience, it's a wheel. Like, life is a wheel. My career's been a wheel. Their clients come, clients go. I get better. I make mistakes. Sometimes I get burned. Sometimes I burn someone else by not intentionally, but it just happens. If you stay in it long enough, you have the confidence to be yourself. You keep doing what you do. There's always going to be room. Like, there's room for people and there's room for you. It's just knowing how to tastefully do it as best as possible and do your best. There's never a hard and fast answer.
There's always a large, I always say this, is there's always new clients.
Yeah. Go ahead.
If I'm saying no, I always like to make sure I include the names of like 3 photographers that they can look to hire.
That's great.
And that way I'm not just saying no and disappearing. I'm acting as a resource and also building out my community as well. And then one of those photographers gets hired, they're going to recommend me for another job.
Very, very smart. I would say one caveat to that, one way you will burn a client, and I would say it is on you, is saying initially yes or okay, or kind of leading them on down the road and then ultimately saying no. If you're not comfortable, you should communicate that right away, in my opinion. One thing I wanted to add to travel is because what I do, we travel with a ton of gear. Filmmakers love toys and they're very, very heavy. So one of the things we've been contemplating is adding in different travel costs. For instance, finding driver to transport our equipment, finding and transport us. Or maybe me and my partner, we're talking about stripping our crews way, way down. We have a safety protocol. We built ourselves a little Pelican PPE kit that has 70% ethanol. You can buy on Amazon 99% alcohol, isopropyl alcohol, and you can dilute that to 70%. I had to have my wife do the calculation and mixture for me because I really not good at math, but she did it. We put it in spray bottles, and the first thing we do whenever we walk into any room moving forward is walk in with mask, gloves, and paper towels and alcohol and wipe the whole thing down. We do the same thing with the equipment when we bring it out. Your camera's a different thing. Definitely, make sure you take extra care with your camera. We do the same thing if we put all the equipment away. But that's we're trying to sterilize before we enter, sterilize after we leave. So to the best of our ability, we're leaving, as little germ trace as possible, I guess you could say.
Are you dealing with any issues with rental houses having availability for half the other stuff you need?
So far, I've not had the issue of dealing with rental houses personally. I do know a few people that are working with rental houses. The availability is not the issue right now. Matter of fact, if you have a production right now, rental houses are very, very willing to work with you because they're in the same issue we all are. They actually I've heard stories about them being great resources. Whenever you say, hey, how do we sterilize this? We want to be this. They'll sometimes even give you sterilization equipment and they'll tell you how they want the equipment dealt with and what's the best practice. So it's a really, as you do start moving forward, don't be afraid. I'd say again, don't be afraid to ask. We're all trying to crack this nut. You know what I mean? There is no solid answer. Nobody in living memories lived through something like this. So the most dangerous thing is to be silent and try and just ignore things. I think the most important thing is to communicate and say, here's what I'm thinking. What do you know? How can I do better? Cool. So we have a couple of questions that we're going to start wrapping up here in a few minutes, but a couple of questions we can just get through. For one thing, we have a question here. So what is the strangest, funniest, most inspiring thing you've seen during COVID, and did you get a picture of it?
No.
Unfortunately,
I wish I did.
I had a strange experience. Maybe it was Memorial Day, and I went to the graveyard to do some feature work on people mourning, and I got a text that there was grandparents that wanted to see their kids. Actually from my sister, and the son had set up a clothesline with drop cloth, a plastic drop cloth from the hardware store, because he wanted to have his grandparents hug his he wanted to hug his parents, and the grandparents wanted to hug the kids. And my sister thought, hey, why don't you just come over and see how that works out? And so I thought, all right, I'll pop over afterwards. And I looked at it, and when I got there, and I just was like, well, this can go a couple of ways, and we'll see, I thought. And it turned out to be very emotional. There was lots of crying, and every time that they hugged each other in different parts of the plastic, I think they changed the plastic, whatever, there was imprints, through the plastic. And it was just kind of dramatic pictures of hands and faces coming through the plastic, hugging the grandparents. So I found that to be probably the biggest surprise of the whole pandemic for me, photographically. It's something that I just didn't know what to expect. And even after I took the pictures, and I called my picture desk, and I was like, hey guys, I got these kind of pictures here. I don't know what you want to do with them. Let me know if this works. And I sent 25 of them, and they said, yeah, this is different, Al. So they put it out, and yeah, it was all right, So I don't know if that's funny, but that's just different.
It's very touching, actually. It's kind of hauntingly touching.
And the pictures were hauntingly touching. I think someone said that actually to me. That's funny you said that. Someone.
Are they out anywhere?
Yeah, they went out on Getty, and it's on my Instagram. But yeah, they went out, and they went out yeah, last month, probably, maybe a month and a half ago. Yeah.
Does anybody else have any fun content COVID stories or interesting ones? I guess it can be hauntingly touching too, but Al put a hell of a bar up for that one.
Yeah.
I can't think of any.
Before Corey answers, I will just say, if you have any questions, now's the time to get them in, because we will go ahead and we'll be starting to wrap up after this. If you have any other questions, now's your time.
That's Al's shot.
Wow.
Right
Look at that.
Look at that. That's really awesome.
Damn it.
That is really awesome.
All right, Corey, sorry to interrupt you. What was your question there?
No. So I guess you reminded me of a situation I was in early on in this. My dad works at a hospital, and so he got COVID. I was expecting him to get COVID. Everyone's fine now, but he got it really bad. So we went to go visit, and I brought my 2 kids, and I was like bringing him like soup or something. And then everyone kind of like, we stayed in our car, and my entire family just like came out and like stood on the driveway and lined up. And it was sort of eerie. They kind of like came from all different directions in the house. And I have a picture of it. I haven't published it on Instagram or anything, just like on my phone, but they kind of like all stood in a line, and I like took the kids out of the car, and they just like waved. But it was, like you said, it was like pretty, like, it was a pretty intense moment, and we didn't know like what was going to happen at that point. And like, luckily everyone got it, and then everyone was fine. But I think this like whole situation is leading to a lot of moments like that are like so emotionally charged on like lots of different levels. Like, it's heartwarming and lovely, and also like really, really emotional.
That's.
I got a question for Al though, before we move forward. Al, how does it feel with all these like numerous amounts of photographers now that are out there documenting like these protests? I mean, I feel like when you see protests, everyone has a camera now, documenting everything. How do you? I get like overwhelmed. I'm like, I'm not gonna take the same shot these guys are taking, and there's like like 30 people taking the same shot. How do you feel about that? How do you get past that?
I feel like I do, like if I'm at a sporting event and I'm sandwiched at the Olympics next to 100 other photographers. I just think in my mind, I know what I want. And regardless of what anyone's doing sitting next to me, look, people can sit right next to each other and get 2 totally different photos. So I don't really think too much about that stuff. I mean, I just try and think, how can I make this look a little different? You know, and with me, it's lighting. You know, I bring with photojournalism, a lot of photojournalists don't bring lighting into their work, artificial lighting, I should say, sorry. And with strobes and all that other stuff. So I actually took that to some of the protests, and that's how I was trying to separate myself a bit from the other photographers, if that's what you're saying. But am I worried about what other photographers are doing? Some are doing, I mean, the most incredible, groundbreaking work in this historical time, you know, yeah. And whether it's in front of them or whether they're thinking. There's a young man who I'm very fond of works for the Associated Press. His name's Julio Cortez, and got an incredible photograph of a silhouetted flag during the Minneapolis protests. And his story, you know, and I could see his train of thought because we worked together a lot when he worked in New Jersey. And he followed this guy with a flag from all the way down the street, and he saw the burning building across the street. And as the guy went with the flag, he was able to expose it because he was looking as he was going to make sure his exposure was right. Wow. And when he got to the fire, it was like one frame and then it was gone. But it was, well, as far as I'm concerned, frame of the whole protest. You know, I don't think anyone since or before or after has come close to a photo like that. So I got to sit back and just admire his thought process, you know, and again, just try and think for yourself, what can I do? What can I do different? And try not to worry so much about what the lady or gentleman is doing next to you. You know, you got to worry about what you're doing.
That's incredible to be able to improvise that quickly, have creative insight, and then be able to prepare as you go. I mean, that's really clever.
It was, and this guy Julio is a humble, hardworking. I mean, he's got an incredible story how he escaped Mexico when he was a kid. I mean, he crossed the border. It was a whole scene, but this guy is one of the hardest working photographers. I think the world of him. And I'm that he got this photograph. One day you should do a seminar with him the next time you guys all get together and just talk about his experience. But he thought about it. You know, you think that's how you separate yourself. And this young man thought his way through seconds while getting pepper sprayed and guys trying to beat on him. And I mean, it's chaos around him. And somehow the guy's able to think, expose it, silhouette it against a flaming building and get it perfect. And the guy did. I mean, look it up, you'll see. I mean, it's a great photograph. And I'm not going to take away the horror that's going on there, you know, but you do ask if I admire someone's work. And, you know, my goodness, it's somebody whose work I definitely admire.
We have one more question, and this is going to be the last one, then we'll go ahead and wrap up. But with no audiences at venues, do you think a VR experience of being there will be more implemented for live events like movies, concerts? I can speak to this pretty directly. I know that there's a new company that one of my friends actually just launched. It's not even officially fully launched yet, but they are even doing virtual concerts, and that's part of their business plan. So yes, I think definitely VR experience has already been done in sports. It's been a thing within some of the apps of sports. I think that they definitely will be implemented more. I don't know if you have any experience with VR in sports, Al.
I have not experienced any VR in sport, no.
So to answer your question, my suspicion is yes. I think that will be definitely something once it's safe for athletes to start performing in. I think that definitely will be something that's explored. So where can people find your work, guys? If they want to follow you, if they don't already follow you, how would you tell them to see you? Seth?
Last Ex-Witness on virtually everything, and if you follow Adorama, you've seen my stuff.
How about you, Corey?
It's just my name, Corey Torpy Photography on Instagram. It's probably the best place to catch me.
Al?
Yeah, my Instagram is albello55 at albello55, and my website's my name, albello.com.
Toots?
It's basically Toots anywhere on Instagram, TUTES, and also my website is toots.nyc, and Twitter too, if you want to follow me there, TUTES.
Great. You can find me on Instagram. I'm Stephen C. Pierce, basically on everything. Also StephenCPierce.com. And we're about to launch a podcast, actually, for anybody that's interested in independent filmmaking. We have one that's coming out starting in July called Independent Filmmakers Guide. So you can find us over there if you are interested in a little more video stuff. We're going to be talking to a lot of people. So thank you all very much for joining us. It's been lovely to talk to you guys. And I hope this was beneficial for everybody that was watching. So thanks for watching.
Thank you for having us.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you.